And now the conclusion of Water to Share. Her entire body jolted. Myoclonic twitch, perfectly normal at this stage. Stage? Stage of what? Zaylin opened her eyes with a gasp and squinted against the ceiling lights. Ceiling lights? She tried to push herself onto her elbows, but her arms refused to move. It was an effort just to slide her hand along the satin sheet covering her. She raised it just enough to see that she was naked. She felt her chest quiver as dark possibilities raced through her mind. She dropped the sheet, then lifted it once more. The hole in her chest was gone. Not even a scar remained. The skin was merely red and slightly tender. Across from her, a flat computer monitor filled the wall. Two empty beds flanked her on either side. A few steps beyond the one on her right, a corridor led to parts unknown. Naked or not, Zaylin had found her exit. She flexed her other hand and reached for the dagger at the end of her braid, only to find her hair unbound and strewn across her pillow. Ah, the fair princess awakens at last. A man moved into view from her left. An impossible man. A dead man. Zaylin opened her mouth to speak, but found her brain unable to conjure words. I don't believe we've met. Gently he took her hand in his and raised it to his lips. After a brief peck on her knuckles, he smiled. Dr. Isaac Geary. Isaac, we met yesterday. You showed us around your ship before Sandor. Not I, my dear. I was observing you from down here the entire time. You interacted with an android. He sighed and shook his head. Last working unit I had left, in fact. Rather remarkable likeness, don't you think? Pity. It was a fantastic chess partner. Although I suspect it let me win more often than not, but I digress. He pointed to her chest. I should have a look at that. With a glare intended to convey her indignation, Zaylin yanked the sheet up to her chin. Isaac merely chuckled, which annoyed her all the more. You realize your clothes do not remove themselves. At my age, I've seen it all, young lady. I merely wish to check your wound. Zaylin's grip on the sheet remained firm. Zay, may I call you that? Zay, I know you're feeling disoriented and vulnerable, but I have an idea. He reached for something behind her head. After a second, she found her hand once again in his, as he wrapped her fingers around the grip of her blaster. I'm giving this back to you. If I do anything untoward, you have my blessing to shoot. Of course, I would oblige you to keep in mind that I'm not an android. I stand before you the last of me. The resemblance between this man and his android was uncanny, right down to the sorrow in his eyes and the congenial smile that engendered her trust. With a sigh, she lowered the sheet to her navel. Isaac leaned in. Zaylin turned her gaze to the ceiling as he gingerly pressed and rubbed the skin between her breasts. Beautiful, he said wistfully. Zaylin waved the blaster next to his head. And when I say that, I refer to the perfect healing of what would otherwise have been a fatal wound, as well as your most ample bosom. Though she twisted her lips and sneered at him, she found his honesty amusing and didn't mind the compliment either. She cleared her throat. How? Isaac retrieved a glass of water from what she surmised was a counter behind her bed. Drink this. He helped her sit up and supported her back as she tentatively brought the glass to her lips. It isn't poison. If I wanted to kill you, the past 2 days provided ample opportunity. 2 days? That's how long you've been comatose. Now, drink. She did as ordered and quickly learned that it was not water. Rancid prune juice mixed with engine coolant came to mind. She launched into a coughing fit that damn near made her vomit. Isaac patted her back. What was that shit? My own concoction to clear away the cobwebs. He began massaging her shoulders. His touch was firm yet soothing. She allowed her head to roll back. How did you heal me? Nanites. Zaylin jerked away and leveled the blaster at him. You put those things in my body? Isaac raised his hands, but did not back away. I assure you they healed your wounds, including that nasty burn on the side of your head, and then deactivated. They're not natural. They're against the laws of God, yes, so I've heard. So is a life of crime, said the doctor to the gang member, leveling a gun at him. You gave it to me. And does it make you stronger? Does it feel good to have the power of life and death right now, this minute? Are you going to kill me? After a few moments of deliberation, Zaylin tossed the weapon onto a neighboring bed. There's been enough killing since I got here. True enough. You should be more discriminating with the company you keep. Zaylin's eyes widened. How could she forget? Sandor, where is he? Oh, after a day of wandering the desert in search of your stolen cruiser, he returned to my ship. Since then, I think he's been plotting his next move, though I dare say his emotional state is clearly deteriorating. As far as he's concerned, he's very much alone. Why couldn't he find the cruiser? It wasn't that far away. I'll explain later. Just know that you're safe. He'll never find you down here. Where is down here? Infirmary, of course. Look around you. Were you able to save Zard and Neff? Able to? Yes. Inclined? No. Why not? Well, Sandor was correct. Your mute friend killed Zard with your dagger. I don't save murderers, or rapists for that matter. Besides, my resources are limited. Zaylin squared her shoulders. Well, does it feel good to have the power of life and death? Feelings have nothing to do with it, child. Merely a matter of self-preservation. But you saved me. Why? I saw something more in you. I saw how you genuinely mourned your sister at her graveside. I saw the way you behaved after Sandor shot my android. You thought he'd killed me, and it upset you. You're not one of them. Zaylin looked away. I thought I was. Of course, I thought I was in love with Sandor, too. Then why are you with him? We've known each other since school. He was always getting into trouble, but he was attractive, charming. All the women wanted to be with him. We saw each other sometimes, had some mutual friends, but after we learned that we both lost family at Ganzing, we grew closer. Sandor was always looking for excitement, a piece of the action wherever he could get it, legal or not. I saw the money he was making, and I realized that if I could get in on that, I could finally get the hell off Cadron and maybe take my mother somewhere better. She has nothing to look forward to there. The government abandons our sick and elderly to rot. I see. So, you also lost someone as a result of my androids, yet you don't share Sandor's desire for revenge? For Ganzing? No. For the nanites, on the other hand. And I gave you a weapon. You had your chance to use it, yet here I stand. I think I made the right choice. And speaking of weapons, Isaac produced a small rolled towel from his pocket. He unraveled it to reveal the dagger. Cleaned and polished. She took it, turned it over in her hands. Well, it's all over now. Finally, she gazed around the room. So, why didn't you show us this infirmary during the tour of the ship? We're not in the ship, my dear. Well, then where? Questions, questions. You know, there is someone else here who is anxious to see you. Now, don't get nervous and reach for the blaster. I said you're safe here. I'd feel safer if I had some clothes on. Oh, come on, Zay, it's only me. Zay spun to see Nuala strolling over from the other side of the infirmary. She felt her mouth drop open as she jumped to her feet, letting the sheet fall to the floor. She stumbled into her sister's arms, just as her knees gave out. Take it slow, girl. How long have you been here? Oh, about 4 days. Zaylin looked at Isaac. Well, how did you get to her after we buried her? Nuala ended up falling into a tunnel that collapsed when you blasted a hole for her grave. I sent my android in to retrieve her body and determined that there was still enough time to save her, the same way I did you. Nuala, what do you remember before waking up here? Well, the ship was crashing. I was holding onto a rail. I was weightless for a few seconds before I lost my grip and then blacked out. You had severe brain hemorrhaging. The hippocampus region was swollen. I think I finally... Geary thought of Hannah. Could I save her now and preserve her memories? Maybe if I brought her here. What? Geary waved dismissively. Not important right now. Thank you, Nuala. Before we go any further, as much as I enjoy ogling your sister's perfectly round posterior, would you mind getting her some clothes? I need to deal with our new visitors. Who? Yet another police cruiser landed a few clicks south of here, about 2 hours ago. The crew is headed this way on foot. I presume they're looking for you. Captain Keelan. Oh, this just gets worse by the minute. Worry not, my dear. I have no intention of turning either of you in. However, I have to give them someone. It occurs to me that I can't have an armed madman running amok aboard my ship. I won't miss that bastard. Good. In that case, ladies, I have a plan. From his position behind the crescent sand dunes just east of the Jezebel, Geary observed the approaching contingent of sissies. And despite the derogatory sobriquet, Noltak system police were anything but cowardly. They had a well-earned reputation for relentless brutality against the criminal elements, no matter what the offense, a fact that Geary was counting on. With a deep breath, he stepped out into view. He allowed himself to tumble down the side of the dune before charging toward the officers trudging toward his ship. Thank the Maker! Geary waved his arms above his head. Help me, please! Two of the officers drew their blasters, but the leader, larger in every direction, held up a hand signaling for them to stand down. As he closed the remaining few meters, Geary lost his footing and fell face first into the sand. Well, this should enhance the effect. Hannah always said I was quite the actor. He lay still for a moment before crawling toward them. The officers met him halfway. Geary rolled onto his back. He's insane! He killed his own people! He tried to kill me, but I escaped. The leader leaned over, momentarily obscuring both suns, and lifted Geary to his feet with one hand. Identify yourself. The woman's badge read Keelan. She was a head taller than everyone else around her, and about 20 kilos heavier. While her olive complexion was smooth and flawless, the captain's eyes were black, such that Geary could not discern iris from pupil. Not even the heat from binary stars could remove the chill inflicted by her gaze. She could doubtlessly hold a riot without need of words or weapons. Isaac, ma'am. Isaac Geary. I live here. No one lives here. Not until I crashed here 3 years ago. I was exiled from Noltak. Look, I don't have time to explain. He just showed up a few days ago. Who? He calls himself Sandor. I think he stole a police cruiser. He put down here for repairs. He said they... Keelan exchanged glances with her men. Where is he and how many are there? Just him. He killed the other two. He's hiding in my ship. I think he's lost his mind. Take us to him. Geary stopped before two mounds in the sand, each marked with a holster belt, minus the blasters. Presumably Sandor had confiscated those. His comrades. He called them Shazard and Neff. What did they look like? The older one was bald, about my height. The other was a mute, young, with ginger hair. Definitely fits a description of Sandor's gang. Was there a woman with them? Died on impact. They had a violent landing. She was buried near the stolen cruiser, a few clicks north of here. Damn. I suppose we'll never be able to ID her. Never really got a good look at her. She only traveled with them occasionally. Keelan nodded toward the Jezebel's enormous bronze aft section jutting out of the sand. Yours? Yes, ma'am. One of the officers, Sergeant Elamov, according to his badge, let out a short whistle. That's an old ship. I'm an old man. This way. Once inside the airlock, Geary led them down the corridor to the crew lounge. He's been in there for 2 days. As far as he's concerned, everyone else is dead, and he's alone. He is about to suffer a rude awakening. Remain here. Yes, ma'am. Keelan nodded to her men, and all three drew their blasters. The captain raised her hand and counted down from 3. Geary leaned against the far wall as Noltak's finest stormed the lounge, followed by unintelligible shouting, interspersed with profanities and a surprisingly lengthy firefight. Apparently, Sandor would not go down easily. All the while, Geary stifled a yawn, brushed sand from his clothes, and checked the time on an antique pocket watch given to him by Hannah as a birthday gift. Soon, gorgeous. Very soon now. You're practically in my arms already. After a second round of colorful expletives and a short salvo of weapons fire, all was silent in the lounge. After 20 more seconds, Geary craned his neck to risk a peek into the room. Sandor was most definitely dead. He lay in a crumpled heap on the floor against the far wall, just below the food replicator. What was left of it. The touchscreen was riddled with smoking blast holes. Geary tossed up his hands. Damn it, that was the last working food replicator. Sir, don't you think you've had your last meal on this rock? We plan to take you with us, of course. That might be complicated. However, there's something I'd like to show you. When my ship crashed, it broke through several sections of tunnels like this one. I didn't realize it right away, of course. but when I stumbled upon them, I decided to explore. Pale orange light strips activated as they advanced through a wide passage, lined on either side with pipes and conduits. Where are you taking us? Keelan's hand hovered over her holster. To one of the greatest scientific discoveries of the century, perhaps of all time. Sergeant Elimov and the other one, Bradova, were on high alert. Their expressions were a melange of curiosity and wariness as the group reached a set of double doors at the end of the tunnel. Relax, everyone. Geary punched in the code, and the door parted. He stepped inside and gestured for Keelan and her men to precede him. What you're about to see is a thing of beauty. One of the men whistled as he entered. I'd have to agree. Geary stepped around the officers. What you're looking at here. The women looked up from a computer console along the right wall. Zaylin's hair remained loose and somewhat unkempt. Her dagger was nowhere to be seen. She had chosen an outfit similar to her sister's, short-sleeved pastel shirt and form-fitting khakis. Doesn't need an explanation, Doc, Radova grinned. Geary held out both arms and embraced the women. Girls, we have guests. Captain Keelan, these are my granddaughters, Senia and Valise. I took them under my wing when their parents died unexpectedly. Geary observed Zaylin's deadpan expression as she met Keelan's gaze. If the captain recognized her, there was no outward indication. What about Sandor? Nuala asked. Keelan drew her shoulders back and inflated her chest. She spoke in a crisp, intimidating tone. That threat has been eliminated, permanently. Was there a slight grin of satisfaction tugging at the corners of her mouth? Zaylin closed her eyes and let out a long breath. Geary gave her shoulder a fatherly squeeze. I cannot imagine the kind of woman that would travel with such vermin. I was forced to hide my girls away from the whole lascivious lot. I can see why. Keelan gazed at Nuala, and yes, this time the grin was unmistakable. Nuala's eyebrows shot up as her face reddened. Geary snapped his fingers. Where are my manners? Might I offer you and your men some water, Captain? That would be appreciated. Geary stepped over to the control panel and activated a series of small touch panels lined up below a massive view screen that consumed the entire width of the wall. Finally, an exterior image of the desert appeared, bathing the entire room in a vivid pink hue. Would it surprise you to learn, Captain, that Rentasa is actually 40% water? Beg pardon? Geary raised a hand toward the view screen. This planet, it's called Rentasa. I think you've been out in the binary suns for too long, Doctor. This planet is Orlon, and it's very dry and very dead. It was Geary's turn to grin. Not to the civilization that built this. He pressed two icons on one of the small monitors, then slid a finger across the one beside it. An audible hum from somewhere beyond the walls grew steadily into a high-pitched whine. Geary turned away from the view screen and clasped his hands behind him. Nearly in unison, all three officers moved their hands above their holsters. His granddaughters merely looked at him expectantly until their eyes were drawn to the view screen. As Geary regarded their expressions, the illumination dimmed, casting their faces in deep green. He took satisfaction in their awe. He'd felt that himself the first dozen times. Finally, the room fell silent. Geary waited. What the hell just happened? Keelan asked finally. So that's what Zard saw. All eyes turned to Zaylin. Who? The bald guy. That was his name, Zard. I overheard him say something about their ship's sensors reading a forest one minute and a desert the next. I thought your grandfather kept you tucked away from them. Surveillance cameras throughout the Jezebel, Captain. Once I translated this ancient language, I was able to link up some of my equipment to the computers here. We were able to monitor everything Sandor and his crew did and said. We don't even live on the ship anymore. No need to. You asked what happened? Come with me. He led them through a different passage, this one angled up toward the surface. After a few minutes, smooth metal walls and artificial light gave way to jagged rock on all sides. Sunlight shone in from an opening ahead. They emerged on a hillside covered with lush trees and shrubs. Directly ahead, a stone path led to a clear freshwater lake that stretched to the horizon. Did I say 40% water, Captain? Why not 50 or 70? I have plenty of it to share. Enough for the entire galaxy. I don't understand. Where are we? Not too far from where you landed. Your vessel's on the other side of this hill. What you're seeing is instant terraforming. According to what I've learned from the ancient database, there are dozens of these machines spread out across this dry, dead world. Each one can alter the molecular structure of the landscape for 1,000 kilometers or more. Imagine duplicating this technology. Starvation, poverty, even war would become obsolete. Keelan shook her head in amazement. You could write your own ticket. My needs are small, Captain. In fact, I'd prefer to write a ticket for someone else. 6 months later. This is gorgeous, Isaac. No more so than you. Hannah laid her head on his shoulder, and he ran her finger gently down the bridge of her nose. They sat on a giant palm, taken from a tree that, until now, had only existed on one planet in the known galaxy. Tame waves caressed the beach, occasionally reaching as far as their toes. This time the sand was powder blue. Geary had grown tired of pink. As far as the eye can see is yours, love. From the moment I discovered the power of this technology, I knew it would bring us together again. Of course, I had no idea that it would inspire a rebellion on Noltak that would overthrow the religious zealots. Hannah lifted her head and kissed him. Their years apart melted away, forgotten. He turned to her, pulled her on top of him as he lay back on the sand. Someone cleared their throat. Geary opened his eyes. Hannah glanced up. Nuala was grinning. Zaylin folded her arms. Get a room. Geary sighed. Children never give you a minute's peace. So, Zay, how goes the business of ferrying curious scientists and politicians from every surrounding system to and from our little world? Lucrative. Boring, Nuala added. It may lack adventure, young lady, but your current shipmates are far less hazardous to your health. So, have you come for a dip in our ocean? The water's fine. We didn't bring swimwear. Hannah shrugged. It's a private beach, just the four of us. And considering I've seen you both in the buff, what's the harm? Hannah raised an eyebrow. Just what have you been up to while I slept, husband? The nanites made me do it. Zaylin glanced at Nuala. Shall we? I will if you will. Hannah stood and began shucking her swimsuit. I think I'll join you. Coming, Isaac? Geary stretched out on the palm leaf and enjoyed the view. As a scientist, I'll just observe. Dirty old man, Zaylin said. By the way, I've been thinking more about getting my mother off Cadron. I was hoping to bring her here. I think she'd be happy, if that's okay. You don't need my permission. This is not my world. It belongs to the galaxy. Well, that reminds me. I keep forgetting to ask. What does Rentasa mean? It means new life, my dear. Rather appropriate for the four of us. Wouldn't you agree?